Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive. And today we're gonna be talking about a book that I recently read and really enjoyed.
Yeah.
And it's called Where'd You Go, Bernadette?
Yeah.
So
Have you read this one?
I have,
Yeah.
and I thought it was a fantastic.
It's a really unique book.
Yeah, it is.
It's not told in a traditional narrative style.
Yeah, it's told through like emails and letters and all these different types of documents and things.
Exactly, like a bunch of different documents that you're sort of piecing together to kind of figure out what is going on in this family.
And it's about this woman named Bernadette Fox. And she's kind of this reclusive former architect living in Seattle.
Yeah, she's definitely a character.
Yeah, and she's got this daughter named Bee, who's about to graduate from middle school, and her husband LG is like a big shot at Microsoft.
Right, yeah, like a tech superstar kind of.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
and so you've got this really interesting family dynamic there. And Bernadette is just so she's so funny and cynical and she sees the world in such a unique way.
And she does not like Seattle or the people in it very much at all.
Especially the parents at her daughter's school, who she refers to as the Nats.
Yeah, she has some very strong opinions about those Nets.
Yes, she does.
But that's part of what makes it so fun to read, right? Like you get to see the world through her very particular lens.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people can probably relate to feeling like an outsider sometimes.
Oh, for sure. I mean, who hasn't felt out of place or misunderstood at some point?
Exactly. And Bernadette just takes it to a whole other level.
She does. She really does.
And so the story kind of revolves around this trip to Antarctica that B earns as a reward for getting straight A's.
Or straight S's, I should say, since they're on a very, very particular grading scale at that school.
Right. Yes, the straight S's. And Bernadette is completely dreading this trip
Understandably.
because she hates crowds and she's not really into the whole travel thing.
Yeah, it's kind of her worst nightmare come to life.
Yeah, pretty much. And this trip ends up being kind of a catalyst for a lot of things that happen in the story.
It is. It's a real turning point for her and her family.
Yeah, it is. But before we get into all of that, I think it's worth talking a little bit more about Bernadette herself.
Yeah, let's dig into her character a little bit more because she's really the heart of this book.
Right. And we learned that she was once a very successful architect.
Like a celebrated architect, actually.
Yeah, she designed this amazing house called the 20-Mile House that was this architectural marvel.
But there's a lot of mystery surrounding what happened to her career and why she ended up in Seattle, seemingly giving it all up.
Yeah, and as you're reading, you start to get these little hints about her past and the things that she's been through.
It's like Semple is dropping these little breadcrumbs throughout the story that make you want to keep reading to figure out what her deal is.
Yeah, exactly.
Like what made her the way she is.
Yeah, what happened to Bernadette Fox?
Right. What's the backstory there?
And why is she so unhappy?
Yeah.
So the story is kind of like this mystery unfolding.
It is. It's kind of like a puzzle that you're putting together piece by piece.
Yeah, and you're trying to figure out Bernadette along with her family.
Exactly.
And I think that's part of what makes it so engaging.
Oh, for sure. It keeps you guessing the whole time.
Yeah.
And Bernadette is such a compelling character that you really want to know what makes her tick.
Right. And even though she can be kind of difficult and prickly at times, you can't help but root for her.
I agree. She's flawed, but she's also incredibly human and relatable in a lot of ways.
Definitely.
So even if you've never felt like you wanted to run away to Antarctica, I think there's something about Bernadette's story that will resonate with everyone.
Yeah, I think so too.
It's a story about finding yourself even when you feel lost.
And about the importance of family and connection.
Absolutely. And it's also really funny.
Oh yeah, it's hilarious in parts.
I mean, Bernadette's voice is just so sharp and witty.
Yeah, she's got some of the best one-liners I've ever read.
Seriously, like I found myself laughing out loud multiple times.
Me too, me too.
So if you're looking for a book that's both entertaining and thought-provoking.
And a little bit offbeat.
Yeah, definitely offbeat, then
Yeah.
I highly recommend. Where'd You Go, Bernadette?
Yeah, I do too.
It's a book that will stay with you long after you finish reading it.
Yeah.
And it might even make you want to book a trip to Antarctica.
Or maybe not.
Maybe not, but at least you'll get to experience it vicariously through Bernadette
That's true.
and without all the hassle of actually going there.
Exactly.
All right, well, I think that's a good place to wrap up this part of our deep dive into Where'd You Go, Bernadette?
Yeah,
We'll be back soon, talk more about the book, so stay tuned.
so it's good.
And in the meantime, if you haven't read it yet, I highly recommend checking it out.
Yeah, it's a great read.
All right, until next time, happy reading, everyone. So we left off talking about those little breadcrumbs that the author is dropping about Bernadette's past.
Right, right, like those hints about what happened with her architecture career and why she left L.A.
Exactly. Yeah, like what made her kind of retreat from the world.
And then there's that whole thing about her assistant, Sulin, who she communicates with entirely through email.
Yeah, and who she's never actually met in person, which is kind of strange.
Yeah, it is pretty weird. And it makes you wonder, like, how much of Bernadette's life is actually real and how much of it is just in her head?
Right. Like, is she really as isolated as she seems, or is she just choosing to live that way?
And that's what makes her such a fascinating character. Like, you're never quite sure what to make of her.
You never know what she's going to do or say next.
Exactly. And then, of course, there's the whole Antarctica trip, which is looming over everything.
Right, like a big iceberg on the horizon.
And Bernadette is spiraling about it.
She is really losing it over this trip.
Yeah, like to the point where she's having full-blown panic attacks.
Like at that scene in the pharmacy when she's trying to get her anxiety meds refilled.
Oh my gosh, that was so cringeworthy.
But it was also kind of hilarious.
Yeah, in a dark sort of way.
But it really shows how much she's struggling.
Like how much this trip is pushing her to her breaking point.
Exactly, and it sets the stage for what happens next, which is,
Her disappearance.
yeah, she just vanishes.
Poof, gone.
And suddenly the book becomes this whole other thing.
Like it goes from being this funny, quirky family drama to a full-blown mystery.
Yeah, and we shift from Bernadette's point of view to the perspectives of her daughter B and her husband LG.
Right, as they try to piece together what happened to her.
And it's really clever how the author does that. Like, we're getting the story from multiple angles now.
And we're learning things about Bernadette that she never would have told us herself.
Exactly, like secrets and hidden truths.
And it's all very suspenseful, like you're on the edge of your seat, wondering if they're ever going to find her.
And if they do, what state will she be in?
Yeah, okay, is she in danger?
So many questions.
And then there's the whole setting of Antarctica itself, which is so, yeah, and desolate and just vast.
Like another character in the story.
Right. And it really mirrors Bernadette's own internal state. Like she's this tiny little figure lost in this massive icy wilderness.
Yeah, and it's almost like she needs that kind of emptiness around her to finally confront her own demons.
Yeah, like she's been so surrounded by people and noise and expectations that she needs to escape to this place where there's nothing but her own thoughts.
And the penguins.
Right, and the penguins.
But even in the midst of all this drama and mystery, there are still these moments of humor that pop up.
Yeah, like when LG steals a Zodiac boat to try and sneak onto a research station.
Oh my gosh, that was classic LG.
Yeah, he's such a lovable goofball.
And then there's B, who is just so wise beyond her years.
She is really mature for a teenager.
Yeah, and she's the one who ultimately figures out what happened to Bernadette.
Through a letter that Bernadette wrote explaining everything.
Yeah, that letter is like the key to unlocking the whole mystery.
And it's heartbreaking and heartwarming all at the same time.
It really gets to the heart of what the book is all about.
So that letter, huh?
Yeah, it really changes things, doesn't it?
It does. It's like we finally get to see Bernadette for who she really is.
It's that like behind all the sarcasm and the craziness.
And it turns out she's not crazy at all.
No, not at all. She's just hurting.
Yeah. And she's been carrying around all this pain and guilt for years.
And it's all come to a head with this Antarctica trip.
Right. Like it's forced her to finally confront everything she's been running from.
And make some big decisions about her life.
Yeah. And it's interesting because even though she disappears, she actually ends up finding herself.
In a way, yeah, like she has to lose everything to figure out who she really is.
And what she wants out of life.
Exactly.
And it's not just Bernadette who goes through a transformation.
Now, everyone around her is affected by her disappearance.
Right. Like LG finally starts to see how much he's taken Bernadette for granted.
And how he needs to be a better husband to her.
Yeah. And B really comes into her own.
She becomes this incredibly strong and resourceful young woman.
And she learns that it's okay to be different.
Yeah. To embrace your quirks and your individuality.
And even the gnats, well, at least Audrey Griffin has a moment of self-awareness.
Yeah. She realizes that she's not perfect and that she's been judging Bernadette unfairly.
So in a way, Bernadette's disappearance is kind of a gift to everyone.
It is. It forces them to wake up and see things differently.
And to appreciate what they have.
Exactly. And to let go of the things that are holding them back.
So even though the book starts out as this kind of lighthearted comedy,
it ends up being really profound.
Yeah, it makes you think about the choices we make.
And the masks we wear.
And the importance of being true to ourselves.
And it's all done with this amazing sense of humor and heart.
Yeah, Semple is such a talented writer.
She really is. She can make you laugh one minute and cry the next.
And she creates these characters that are so real and so flawed.
but you can't help but love them.
So if you're looking for a book that will make you laugh and think and maybe even cry a little,
I highly recommend Where'd You Go, Bernadette?
it's a story that will stay with you long after you finish reading it.
And it might even inspire you to go on your own adventure.
Or maybe just to be a little kinder to the gnats in your life.
Exactly. All right, well, I think that's a good place to wrap up our deep dive into Where'd You Go, Bernadette?
Yeah, I think so too.
It's been a fun one.
It has. I've really enjoyed talking about this book.
Me too. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
And happy reading.
Bye.